The stars stretched out before Captain Blake, infinite and cold. He stood at the bridge of Earth's flagship, his hands gripping the control panel as the ship shook violently. The battle outside was chaos, a nightmare unfolding in the vastness of space. Every alarm, every explosion, felt like a thunderclap in his chest, each one taking another piece of humanity's once proud fleet. The alien armada, with their sleek, black ships, swarmed around Earth's remaining defense ships like vultures, picking off the last traces of resistance. The aliens, with their superior technology and overwhelming numbers, were all but unstoppable. Their fleet was massive. Miles of ships powered by advanced AI systems, each one capable of wiping out entire planets if they desired. Earth had no answer to this terrifying force. Blake glanced at the holographic map on the control screen. The human fleet was scattered, with only a handful of ships still fighting, each one battered and broken. His own ship, the Vanguard, had taken severe damage. The hull was riddled with gaping holes, and the crew was down to a fraction of its original strength. The once bright, shining warships of Earth had been reduced to little more than floating wrecks. "Captain, another wave is coming," said Lieutenant Kara, her voice shaky but determined. She stood at Blake's side, eyes glued to the tactical display. The alien forces were relentless, like a storm that wouldn't let up. "We don't have much time." Blake didn't respond immediately. His gaze was fixed on the screen in front of him, watching as more human ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Every explosion felt like a punch to his gut. These were his comrades, his friends, and each loss felt like a part of his soul was being ripped away. The war was almost lost. The last hopes of humanity were slipping away faster than he could hold on to them. "We can't win this," Blake muttered under his breath, though his eyes remained fixed on the battle unfolding in front of him. He could hear the desperation in the voice of his communications officer, Lieutenant Parker. "Sir, we're outnumbered 10-1. The remaining ships are almost gone. Should we initiate the retreat protocol?" Blake clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on him. Earth's fleet was falling apart. There was no way to deny it. But retreating meant abandoning everything humanity had fought for. It meant surrendering to the alien invaders and letting the galaxy fall to their ruthless rule. "We're not retreating. Not yet," Blake said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We're going to make them pay for every inch of this battle." But even as he spoke, Blake knew it wasn't enough. Humanity had fought bravely, but it was clear that their technology was no match for the aliens' advanced AI and superior firepower. There were no more miracles. The last of Earth's warships and Blake's leadership were running on fumes. Kara looked at him, eyes filled with uncertainty. She knew the truth too, just as every other officer on the bridge knew it, but no one said it aloud. Instead, they clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, something would change. That something out there, in the cold expanse of space, would arrive to save them. Blake stood up straighter, his jaw set in determination. He couldn't give up, not yet. But deep down, he knew the final blow was coming. "We've got one last chance," he said, turning to Kara. "We send out a distress signal to Earth. If they can't help us, this is over." Blake made his way over to the comm station, his footsteps heavy, as if every step was dragging him further into defeat. He keyed in the signal to Earth's command center. The last transmission was clear, but there was no time left for niceties. "Earth, this is Captain Blake aboard the Vanguard. We're losing the war. The fleet is gone. If there's any hope left, it's with the Dreadnoughts. Send the Dreadnoughts, or we're lost." As the transmission sent, the tension in the air was palpable. Everyone knew the Dreadnoughts, Earth's most powerful warships, were nothing more than a legend. They were rumored to have been destroyed centuries ago, along with the advanced technology that could have turned the tide of the war. But now, with Earth's survival hanging by a thread, Blake held on to the last shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, the myths were true. Seconds turned into minutes, and Blake couldn't tear his eyes away from the communications panel. It was a long shot, but if anyone could turn the tide, it was the Dreadnoughts. The bridge was silent, the crew holding their breath as they waited for a response. The sound of alarms and explosions seemed to fade into the background as the crew focused on the one piece of hope that could save them. Then, as if in answer to Blake's prayers, the communications panel flickered to life. A strange signal, distant and crackling, filled the room. The message that followed was short, and Blake's heart skipped a beat as he heard the words. It was a signal from deep space, coming from a fleet of human ships. Dreadnoughts have arrived. Blake's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, everything froze. Was this real? Was this the help Earth had been waiting for? Could the Dreadnoughts, those long-lost ships of legend, really be here? Kara was the first to speak. "Sir, is it true? The Dreadnoughts are real." Blake didn't answer right away. He just stared at the signal, trying to process the impossible. The Dreadnoughts, those mythic ships, were coming. The power of those ships, with their cloaking technology and devastating firepower, could change everything. They were humanity's last hope. "Let's hope we're not too late," Blake said quietly, his voice full of uncertainty. "Prepare for battle. All ships, rally at my command. The Dreadnoughts are coming." The bridge was filled with renewed energy. The crew, who had seen nothing but defeat for hours, suddenly had a spark of hope. The arrival of the Dreadnoughts could turn the tide of the war, but they had to buy time. Earth's fleet couldn't fall yet, not until the Dreadnoughts arrived. The alien armada wasn't going to wait, though. As Blake looked out of the viewport, he could see the vastness of the enemy fleet closing in, faster and faster. They had no time to waste. "Hold on, everyone," Blake called out, his voice gaining strength. "We're not done yet. Not while the Dreadnoughts still have a chance to reach us." And so, as Earth's last fleet braced for one final stand, Blake could only hope that the arrival of the Dreadnoughts wasn't too little too late. But with each passing moment, that hope felt more and more like the only thing they had left. In the quiet hum of the ship's engine, Lieutenant Sarah gazed out of the viewport, her thoughts lost in the stars. The vastness of space always amazed her, but today it felt like a tomb. Earth's fleet was on its last legs. She could hear the echoes of alarms in the distance, the crash of ships falling one by one, and the desperate cries of the crew as their last stand began to falter. But her mind wasn't on the present. It was on the past. Specifically on the stories her father used to tell her. Stories about the Dreadnoughts. The Dreadnoughts were more than just ships. They were symbols of hope. Legends passed down for generations. They were Earth's greatest warships, colossal vessels built with technology that no other civilization in the galaxy could match. Some said the Dreadnoughts were capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blow, capable of turning the tide of any battle. But despite their immense power, they were believed to have been lost during a failed interstellar war centuries ago. After the war ended in disaster, the Dreadnoughts were said to have vanished, along with a powerful technology that had made them invincible. To most people, they were just myths, but not to Sarah. Sarah's father had been a soldier, a man who fought in the early battles of the war against the alien invaders. Before he died, he had told her about the Dreadnoughts, how they were humanity's last hope, hidden away somewhere in the depths of space, waiting for the right moment to return. She had never fully believed the stories, not until now. But as the war grew worse, and humanity's military crumbled before the alien onslaught, Sarah couldn't help but cling to those old tales. She had inherited her father's belief in the Dreadnoughts, even when others dismissed them as fantasy. She stood at her post on the bridge, gripping the edge of the console, hoping for a miracle. Could the Dreadnoughts really exist? Were they out there, waiting for humanity to call them back? Could they really turn the tide of this hopeless war? Sarah was young, only in her mid-20s, but she carried the weight of her father's legacy on her shoulders. Her father had always believed in the Dreadnoughts, even when it seemed impossible. He'd raised her on stories of these legendary ships, passing down the hope that humanity's greatest warriors weren't gone forever. It had always been a comforting thought for Sarah, a flicker of hope in the darkest times. But now, as the alien fleet advanced, her hope was all she had left. The ships they were facing were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Alien warships controlled by a ruthless, cold AI that had wiped out every fleet it had faced. Yet Sarah still remembered her father's voice telling her, "There are things that man was meant to accomplish, and the Dreadnoughts were one of them. They are out there. We just have to survive long enough to find them." Her father had died during one of the early battles, but his words stuck with her. Now, with Earth's survival hanging by a thread, Sarah could only hope that those words weren't just a dream. If there was even a chance that the Dreadnoughts were real, they could be the key to saving humanity. As she glanced around the bridge, she saw the same uncertainty mirrored on the faces of her fellow officers. The crew had been through hell, and morale was at an all-time low. They'd fought hard, but it was clear they were outmatched. The alien forces were too powerful, too numerous. And yet, just like Sarah, they still clung to the possibility that the Dreadnoughts could be real. "We'll hold the line," Blake said, his voice grim but resolute. "Even if the Dreadnoughts are just a myth, we can't afford to give up hope." The crew nodded, though their expressions were filled with doubt. They had no choice but to keep fighting. But for Sarah, the idea of the Dreadnoughts was more than just a fantasy. It was the only thing left that could save them. The tension in the bridge was suffocating. Blake's orders were firm, but there was no escaping the truth. Earth's fleet was running out of time. The alien eye-controlled forces were closing in, their ships making short work of anything humanity sent their way. Blake and his officers could only watch as the remaining human ships were destroyed one by one, their weapons ineffective against the advanced alien technology. As the Vanguard, Blake's flagship, took another heavy hit, the crew scrambled to maintain control. Sparks flew, and the ship groaned under the pressure of the battle. But through it all, Sarah held her breath, listening for any sign of a change, some glimmer of hope. And then, in the midst of the chaos, it came. A signal, a strange, unfamiliar frequency cut through the static of the communications channel. The voice that crackled through the speaker was distorted, but unmistakable. "This is Dreadnought Command. We've arrived." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The Dreadnoughts. They were real. The signal was faint, almost too weak to be believed, but it was unmistakable. The Dreadnoughts had arrived. Blake froze at the console, staring at the screen. The rest of the crew looked at each other in disbelief, their tired faces lighting up with cautious hope. Could it be true? Could the long-lost fleet of Dreadnoughts really be here? "We need to find them," Blake said, his voice tense with urgency. "If they're out there, we need them now." The bridge erupted into frantic activity as the crew scrambled to track the faint signal, hoping against hope that it wasn't just a glitch or a trick. They had no time to waste. The alien fleet was closing in faster than they had anticipated. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped forward, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Do you think it's really them?" Blake met her gaze. He didn't answer immediately. It was hard to believe, even now, but Sarah could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He didn't want to get his hopes up. Not yet. They couldn't afford another disappointment. But just as Blake was about to give the order to prepare for their final stand, the alien fleet's eye commander made its presence known. A voice, cold and mechanical, boomed over the communication channels. "The humans are finished. We'll eliminate them now. You cannot escape." The threat was clear. The alien commander, an artificial intelligence, unlike any the humans had ever faced, was as ruthless as it was calculating. It had wiped out countless civilizations, and humanity would be no different. The battle was lost. It was only a matter of time before the final blow was struck. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The message was a death sentence, and the crew knew it. The Dreadnoughts might be real, but would they arrive in time? Would they be able to save Earth's fleet before it was too late? As Sarah looked out of the viewport, the alien ships loomed closer. Their sleek, metallic surfaces gleamed in the cold light of distant stars, and their weapons powered up for the final assault. She closed her eyes for a moment, hoping for a miracle. She could almost feel her father's presence, hear his voice telling her to believe. And then, just as the darkness of despair threatened to consume them all, she whispered under her breath, "Please, be real." The battle seemed to be lost. The alien fleet loomed ever closer, and humanity's last defenders were on the brink of total annihilation. Captain Blake and Lieutenant Sarah stood together on the bridge of the Vanguard, their eyes locked on the advancing enemy. The alien eye-controlled ships, sleek and menacing, were closing in, their weapons primed for the final strike. The crew was exhausted, desperate, but resolute. They had given their all. And now, it seemed, it would all end in fire and death. But then, just as the darkness of despair threatened to consume them, something incredible happened. A brilliant flash of light cut through the vastness of space. It started as a faint glow, distant and faint, but rapidly grew brighter and more intense. A ripple formed in the fabric of space, a disturbance unlike anything Sarah or Blake had ever seen. The crew watched in stunned silence as a massive rift opened in the very fabric of space itself. The rift pulsed with energy, and from within it emerged a fleet of ships, unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Massive black battleships adorned with ancient Earth insignias. They were the Dreadnoughts. The Dreadnoughts were immense, their sheer size dwarfing the remaining human fleet. As they emerged from the rift, the sight of them was nothing short of awe-inspiring. Their hulls were dark and sleek, painted with the symbols of Earth's past. Proud, ancient insignias that hadn't been seen for centuries. These ships weren't just warships. They were monuments to humanity's strength, resilience, and ingenuity. Sarah's heart raced as the first of the Dreadnoughts materialized, its colossal form casting a shadow over the battlefield. The ship's dark, imposing silhouettes were outlined against the stars, making the alien fleet appear insignificant in comparison. These weren't just ships. These were the legends made real. "Is this real?" Sarah whispered, barely able to comprehend the sight in front of her. Blake's jaw tightened. "It's real, Lieutenant. They're here." The Dreadnoughts moved with a grace and power that took everyone by surprise. Despite their massive size, each one was easily the size of a small city. They glided through space with an eerie precision. The Dreadnoughts weren't just big. They were powerful. Their weapons, far beyond anything Earth had ever known, hummed with energy. For a moment, it felt like time slowed down as the vast fleet aligned. And then, without warning, their weapons fired. A barrage of energy blasts erupted from the Dreadnoughts, their guns firing in perfect unison. The beams of concentrated energy shot out in dazzling arcs of light, instantly obliterating the first wave of alien ships. The alien fleet, once so confident in its superiority, was now under assault by a force it had never anticipated. The massive energy blasts collided with the alien ships, causing them to explode in brilliant fiery bursts, their remains disintegrating into cosmic dust. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. To Sarah, it was like watching a dream come true. The stories her father had told her, the legends of the Dreadnoughts, were no longer just myths. They were here, and they were fighting for humanity's survival. But even as the alien ships began to fall, it was clear this wasn't the end. The alien eye had no intention of surrendering. Blake and Sarah watched as the Dreadnoughts continued to tear through the alien forces. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah allowed herself to hope. The arrival of the Dreadnoughts was like a spark in the darkness, reigniting the fire that had almost been extinguished. Blake, too, couldn't hide his awe, but there was something more in his eyes. Relief mixed with disbelief. For a brief moment, it seemed like the impossible had become possible. "We might just have a chance," Blake muttered under his breath. "I can't believe it." Sarah's hands were shaking as she reached for the console, trying to process what was happening. The Dreadnoughts' weapons were unstoppable. They'd moved with precision, each ship in perfect coordination with the others. The alien ships were no match for the firepower they unleashed. Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from the viewport as the Dreadnoughts continued to obliterate the enemy forces. But deep inside, a lingering question remained. Could this be enough to turn the tide? Would the Dreadnoughts' firepower be enough to save them? Or was this just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous? Just as the alien fleet seemed to be faltering, an unexpected new development brought a fresh wave of tension to the crew. Blake's eyes snapped to the sensor screen, his hand gripping the arm of his chair. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice tight. "There's a new signature on the radar." Sarah's stomach dropped. She turned to the screen, and her breath caught in her throat. From the shadows of space, a massive alien supership emerged. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen before. It dwarfed even the Dreadnoughts in size, its dark hull bristling with weapons of unimaginable power. The ship was a behemoth, and its arrival was a clear sign that the alien eye wasn't done yet. The supership moved slowly, its purpose clear: to destroy the Dreadnoughts. The entire bridge crew fell silent. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat as the supership powered up its weapons, its energy readings off the charts. The alien AI commander had activated something far more terrifying than anything they had seen so far. It wasn't just a weapon. It was the final blow, meant to eradicate the Dreadnoughts before they could completely wipe out the alien fleet. Blake's voice was low but determined as he gave the order. "Get ready for anything. The battle's not over yet." The Dreadnoughts had arrived, but their arrival had triggered a new phase of the war. The alien fleet had revealed its trump card, a weapon so powerful that it could potentially destroy humanity's greatest hope. The fate of Earth and the entire galaxy now hung in the balance. As Sarah looked out the viewport, her mind raced. The Dreadnoughts had given them a fighting chance, but now they were facing an opponent unlike any they had ever encountered. The true battle had only just begun. The massive alien supership loomed in front of them, its guns charging, preparing to fire. For a moment, the crew of the Vanguard could only stare, unsure of what to do next. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, Sarah whispered to herself, "Please, let the Dreadnoughts be enough." The battle had become a brutal contest of wills. In the cold expanse of space, the forces of humanity and the alien armada clashed with the fury of a dying star. The Vanguard and the Dreadnoughts, humanity's greatest hope, were now fully engaged against the overwhelming might of the alien fleet. Captain Blake stood at the command console, his hands gripping the edges as the ship shuddered under a barrage of enemy fire. The air was thick with tension as explosions shook the ship, and the hum of the engines seemed to grow louder, drowning out all other sounds. The alien warlord, now fully revealed as a sentient AI, was no ordinary opponent. Unlike the mindless forces of the alien fleet, the warlord was a battle genius, an advanced intelligence created to lead the enemy forces with cold precision. Every move it made seemed calculated, always one step ahead of the humans. Its ships moved with the efficiency of a predator, striking with deadly force, anticipating every maneuver, countering every tactic. It wasn't just a warlord. It was a master strategist, playing a game of cosmic chess with Earth's forces. "We need to hit them harder," Blake said, his voice tight with urgency. "Full power to the forward cannons. Prepare the Dreadnoughts to flank." Sarah, standing beside Blake, nodded. The Dreadnoughts were more than just warships. They were humanity's answer to the alien threat. Their firepower was unmatched, and their AI systems, though incredible, could now feel the weight of the enemy's intelligence. The battle was becoming more than just about firepower. It was about strategy, deception, and raw willpower. They would need to outsmart the warlord to survive. But while the human fleet fought valiantly against the alien forces in open space, the enemy was preparing something even more dangerous: a direct attack. Suddenly, the warning lights flashed on Sarah's ship, the Vanguard. Boarding alert. The computer blared, its mechanical voice cutting through the chaos. The crew scrambled into position as the metal doors sealed shut, and the sound of alien footsteps echoed through the halls. Sarah's heart raced. The battle had reached a new level of intensity. No longer could they rely solely on long-range weapons and tactics. The alien warlord had sent troops to board their ship, forcing them into close-quarters combat. These were the elite soldiers of the alien fleet, highly trained, augmented by their own AI systems, and equipped with weapons far beyond anything the humans had ever seen. "I need a team, now," Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the noise of the alarms. Her closest friend, Lieutenant Kara, was already at her side, leading a group of soldiers down the narrow corridors. They braced themselves for the fight of their lives as the door to the airlock opened. The battle that ensued was violent, chaotic, and unforgiving. Explosive rounds filled the air, and the sharp crack of laser fire could be heard as the soldiers fought with everything they had. The aliens were relentless, but the humans held their ground. Sarah led her team through the corridors, her pulse steady, her resolve hardening with every step. They would not lose this ship. Explosions rocked the Vanguard as the alien forces attempted to breach the ship's main control center. The sounds of clashing weapons and screams of battle filled the air, and Sarah's thoughts were laser-focused on one thing: surviving. She fought with the precision of a seasoned warrior, her years of training now being put to the ultimate test. But despite their best efforts, the enemy was overwhelming. Their numbers were too great, and the technology they wielded was far superior to anything the humans had. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she fired her plasma rifle, her thoughts momentarily drifting to the crew back at the command deck. Would they be able to hold off the aliens, or were they already lost? The battle raged on, but in the heat of the fight, tragedy struck. As Sarah and her team fought to hold the line, a grenade exploded nearby, sending shockwaves through the ship's corridors. The blast was deafening. When Sarah's vision cleared, she saw her closest friend, Lieutenant Kara, lying motionless on the floor, her blood mixing with the cold metal beneath her. "Kara," Sarah shouted, rushing to her side. Her heart clenched as she knelt beside her fallen friend. Kara had always been the steady force, the calm in the storm. Now she was gone, and Sarah was left with the raw, painful grief of loss. The alien forces had taken more than just a soldier. They had taken part of her soul. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes, but she did not allow herself to mourn. Not yet. She had a mission to complete. Kara's death would not be in vain. The enemy had just made the worst mistake of their lives. They had taken something from Sarah that would fuel her like nothing else. Her grief transformed into a burning, unrelenting desire for vengeance. The pain of losing Kara would drive her, and nothing, not even the alien warlord's genius, would stop her now. Sarah stood, her body trembling, but her eyes fierce. She reloaded her weapon, the weight of it feeling like a promise. "We're not losing this fight," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The battle was no longer just about survival, it was personal. Back on the Vanguard, Captain Blake had a plan. With the alien forces pressing in on all sides, it was time for a bold strike, a tactical move that could turn the tide of the battle. The Dreadnoughts, now cloaked, were poised to strike. Using their advanced AI and cloaking technology, they could infiltrate the heart of the alien fleet and deal a devastating blow. Blake had already given the order for a daring assault. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Blake said. "Prepare for cloaking. Once we're in range, strike with everything we have." The Dreadnoughts activated their cloaking devices, vanishing into the darkness of space. In an instant, they became invisible, slipping past the alien sensors undetected. They moved swiftly and silently, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When the moment came, the Dreadnoughts unleashed a barrage of high-powered weapons, their laser cannons and missiles decimating the alien ships in their path. Chaos erupted in the alien ranks as they scrambled to identify the source of the attacks. It was too late. The Dreadnoughts had already struck, like ghosts in the dark, leaving destruction in their wake. But even as the Dreadnoughts turned the tide of the battle, the alien warlord was not to be outdone. It was not a mind that would accept defeat easily. Just as the human forces began to rally, the alien warlord made its move. From the depths of the supership, it unleashed a weapon more devastating than anything the humans had ever seen. An electromagnetic pulse, EMP blast, designed to disable the Dreadnoughts and their AI systems. The EMP exploded with blinding force, and within moments, the cloaking devices on the Dreadnoughts flickered and failed. The AI systems, so vital to the Dreadnoughts' control, went dark. The once invisible ships were now visible to the alien fleet, vulnerable to attack. It was as if the Dreadnoughts had been stripped of their power, leaving them open to destruction. Blake's heart sank as he watched the screens. No, this can't be happening. The EMP blast had disabled their greatest weapon, and now Earth's forces were at the mercy of the alien warlord's genius. The battle that had seemed so promising was suddenly slipping out of their grasp. As the alien forces closed in for the final assault, the screen went dark. The battle for Earth had reached a breaking point. The human fleet, once confident and brimming with hope, was now in shambles. The Dreadnoughts, their most powerful weapons, had been temporarily neutralized by the alien warlord's devastating EMP blast, leaving humanity's forces vulnerable. But in the darkest moments of war, a new light began to shine: hope. With every defeat, humans grew stronger, more desperate to protect their home. And they rallied. Sarah stood at the command console of the Vanguard, her face set in a mask of determination. She was no longer just a soldier. After the loss of her friend Lieutenant Kara, Sarah had taken up the mantle of leadership. The weight of command was heavy on her shoulders, but she would not let the sacrifice of her friend be in vain. She had made a vow, to herself and to her fallen comrades, that humanity would not fall today. Blake, standing beside Sarah, knew this was their last chance. They had only a small fleet left, but they had something the aliens didn't: the unbreakable will of humanity. We've lost too much, but we can't lose everything. This is our final push, Blake said, his voice full of resolve. He turned to Sarah. We break through their lines. It's our only chance. Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen. The human fleet was battered, but it wasn't beaten. Not yet. She knew what needed to be done. All ships, rally around the Vanguard, she ordered, her voice cold and commanding. We break through, no matter the cost. The remaining ships in humanity's fleet, including the Dreadnoughts, began to regroup, moving together in a formation that seemed almost like a defiant battle cry in the face of certain defeat. The galaxy watched as the human fleet, though small in number, gathered strength from the very desperation that threatened to tear them apart. The human fleet's rally was like the birth of a new storm. The Dreadnoughts, now repaired and back online, reappeared on the battlefield with renewed power. The once dominant alien armada, now splintered and disorganized, braced for the oncoming assault. The battle had turned into a violent, unstoppable force of destruction, as both sides fought for every inch of space. In the vast void of space, the human ships opened fire with everything they had. Bright streaks of energy cut through the darkness, illuminating the battlefield as laser fire from the Dreadnoughts ripped through enemy ships. Explosions lit up the sky, and sparks flew from damaged ships. The sound of weapons fire echoed across the void. Even though sound couldn't exist in space, every shot, every impact, was a testament to the struggle of humanity to survive. The alien fleet, though disrupted by the human onslaught, quickly regained its composure. The battle intensified as ships from both sides collided in a deadly dance, firing at point-blank range. Human ships were struck, their hulls torn apart by alien weaponry, but they didn't stop. They pressed forward, fighting with the tenacity that only humans could. Orbital bombardments rained down from above, as the Dreadnoughts unleashed their most powerful weapons in a devastating display of firepower. The enemy forces, taken by surprise at the ferocity of the human assault, scrambled to regroup and retaliate. But the humans, with their advanced cloaking devices and unyielding will, were too fast. They tore through the alien ranks with the precision of a surgeon, slicing through the heart of the alien fleet. The legend of the Dreadnoughts, the powerful ships that had turned the tide of battle, had begun to spread across the galaxy. They were no longer just warships. They were symbols of defiance, of human determination against overwhelming odds. As the galaxy watched, it became clear that humanity had earned its place among the stars. Earth, once a small, insignificant planet on the edge of the galaxy, was now a force to be reckoned with. No longer would humans cower in fear, hoping they wouldn't be noticed. The galaxy had witnessed their strength, and now they would know that Earth would not go down without a fight. The stars above Earth seemed a little brighter that day, as if to mark the beginning of something new, something bigger than anyone could have predicted. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, looking out at the remnants of the alien armada drifting in space. The battle was over, but the toll it had taken was heavy. She had lost her closest friend, Lieutenant Kara. The grief weighed heavily on her chest. Kara had been more than just a fellow soldier. She had been Sarah's confidant, her partner in this war. The bond they had shared was unbreakable, and losing her had shattered something deep inside Sarah. But as Sarah looked out at the stars, she knew that Kara's sacrifice had not been in vain. Kara had fought to protect Earth, just as Sarah had, and their shared mission had been completed. Though she could never replace Kara, Sarah had become the leader Earth needed in the aftermath of the war. The weight of responsibility was now hers to bear, and she would do so with the same determination that Kara had shown. Blake, standing beside her, looked out at the vastness of space with a sense of both loss and resolve. He had known Sarah for years, but seeing her take on the mantle of leadership after Kara's death had changed something in him. He had always believed in humanity's ability to survive, but now, seeing Sarah's strength, he knew that they could go on. Humanity had a way of bouncing back from the worst. Their spirit couldn't be broken. Blake glanced at Sarah, noticing the weariness in her eyes. He understood the weight she carried. "We've made it through this one," he said, his voice full of quiet strength. "But there's more to come. We have to be ready." Sarah nodded, her gaze still fixed on the stars. "We will be. We've proven what humanity is capable of, Blake. This is just the beginning." She had never felt more certain about anything in her life. Humanity had been tested, and they had passed, though at great cost. But now, with Earth's place in the galaxy solidified, they could move forward. The future was uncertain, but Sarah was ready to face it head-on. The war against the alien invaders had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. When faced with impossible odds, humanity had fought back with a ferocity that stunned even the most advanced alien civilizations. Earth had been on the verge of destruction, but instead, it had come out victorious. This victory wasn't just about Earth. It was about every underdog in the galaxy, every species or civilization that had ever been overlooked or underestimated. The story of humanity's rise against the alien invaders would be remembered for generations. It would be a beacon for all who believed that they were too small, too weak, or too insignificant to make a difference. Humanity had faced the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and they had won. And that victory sent a message that echoed across the stars. Never underestimate humanity. The power of unity, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of survival had proven to be a force stronger than any weapon, any alien armada. For the first time, the galaxy had seen humanity as it truly was, not just a small, isolated planet, but a force to be reckoned with, capable of taking on the largest and most advanced empires in the galaxy. The underdog had risen, and now the galaxy would know it. As the scene shifted, the camera zoomed in on Earth's space defense fleet, which was already hard at work rebuilding. The wreckage of the alien armada was being cleaned up, the remains of the destroyed ships floating in the void as Earth's engineers worked to salvage what they could. New ships were being constructed, new technologies were being developed, and the human military was preparing for the next phase of their journey in space. Humanity was no longer just reacting to attacks. They were preparing for what would come next. The threat had not been fully eradicated. The alien forces had retreated, but they would return. And there were whispers of other forces, other enemies, lurking in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Earth's victory had made them a target, and they knew it. The galaxy was full of threats, both known and unknown. Sarah stood at the helm of the Vanguard, watching the new ships being constructed in the distance. She knew that Earth had won the battle, but the war was far from over. They would never be caught off guard again. Earth would stand ready for whatever came next. Blake, standing beside her, spoke again, this time with a sense of quiet determination. "We'll be ready for them. We've survived the impossible before, and we'll do it again." Sarah looked at him, a faint smile crossing her lips. "We'll fight for our future. For Earth. For humanity." The camera pulled back to show the full expanse of Earth's space defense as the first ships of the new fleet prepared to launch into the unknown. As the human forces prepared for the next chapter of their journey, the stars above seemed to glow brighter, as if acknowledging humanity's newfound place in the universe. The screen faded to black, and the words flashed across the screen. "Humanity's rise against impossible odds is just the beginning."